Why was everyone laughing? And why did none of them see who she really was? The corridor outside the women's locker room funneled heat like a blast tube, air thick with detergent, old sweat, and pride. Laughter echoed, not the kind that warms a room, but the kind that grows teeth when no one pushes back. "Hey, gray shirt," someone called from the co-ed annex, voice pitched to be overheard. "You forget your mommy packed your uniform." Another voice followed, higher, sharper, the kind that hunts for approval. "Count your steps, trainee. You'll need them when you quit." Mitchell didn't flinch. She balanced her duffel on one shoulder the way someone carries both weight and patience. Boots clicked across the tile, measured, unbothered. She didn't look left or right. She didn't give them what they wanted, reaction. From the doorway ahead, leaned like confidence was his birthright. A smirk sharpened his face to a point. "Running late again," he said, arms folded. "We can hold your hand across the grinder." He wasn't talking to her, not really. He was talking to the others, building a crowd, feeding them laughter like breadcrumbs. The corridor joined in, echoing him, because cruelty in groups feels like sport. She passed him without a glance. The air in the locker room cooled a fraction. A young bosun's mate, Morales, tied her laces on a bench, eyes flicking up. "You okay?" "Fine," said. Her tone was low, calm, the kind that doesn't need defending. It wasn't surrender, it was choice. From outside came another metallic slam, locker door maybe. Again. "Hope admin's got the paperwork ready," he said, loud enough for echoes. "Somebody's going to be gone by Friday." Laughter replied, then silence, then the kind of silence that hurts a little more than words. Unzipped her bag. Inside, folded PT shorts, a gray t-shirt, a notebook, and nothing that would tell anyone who she was. Her khakis hadn't arrived yet. Supply delay or mix-up. A uniform in transit, like a truth waiting for the right time. She landed 2 days early, officially to observe and report on the training climate across the base. Unofficially, to see what people became when nobody told them they were being watched. Her orders came from the Admiral's desk. Cold read, it had said. No entourage, no announcement, just observation. So she came quiet, and they saw only what they wanted to see: plain fabric, average face, gray shirt, forgettable. That was the test. Mitchell, age 39. Dearborn born, child of a mechanic and a night shift nurse. She spent more nights in emergency tents than anyone needed to. Her father had taught her pressure and patience. Her mother had taught her endurance that didn't need noise. When she enlisted, she'd chosen corpsman, the job that stands in the space between blood loss and heartbeat. Later, she'd earned her commission not through politics or charm, but through what she built in silence. The ribbons she valued most stayed zipped in plastic at the bottom of her duffel, because trophies meant less than truth. Great Lakes felt like heat rising off the grinder, young recruits learning to be hard in all the wrong places. That morning she joined PT like everyone else. Gray shirt, navy shorts, standard pace. She ran beside Morales, a 24-year-old with energy like caffeine and doubt like gravity. "You're not admin," Morales said finally between breaths. Didn't answer right away. She slid a water bottle across after the run, calm, collected. "I'm here to learn." Morales smirked faintly. "Feels like they're testing you." "They test everyone," said. "Yeah," Morales replied, eyes flicking toward. "But not everyone gets graded out loud." Said nothing. She just listened. She learned long ago that silence often says more than speeches. That afternoon, she walked the range, clipboard tucked under one arm, eyes tracing details others missed. Targets lined up against the berms, safety flags drooping in still air. A mix of confidence and carelessness in every stance. A petty officer with sunburned skin saw her coming. "You forget your," he called, half amused. "I've got it," she said, raising the case. He grinned. "Good, we don't want accidents." His tone made the word sound like a warning. Behind him, a recruit coughed, stumbling with his rifle. Too much sun, not enough water. Semitic instincts flared quietly, the kind that don't wait for permission. She leaned toward Morales, murmured, "Watch the one in lane 7. Morales nodded once. "Got it, ma'am." The last word came natural, not because she saw the rank, but because she felt the authority. Overhead, the loudspeaker recited safety rules. Monotone, bureaucratic, necessary. Scan the range log, who signed off what, how recent. Every signature told a story. Discipline, shortcuts, oversight. Then the heat began to win. Lane 7 recruit blinked hard, hands shaking. Sweat soaked his collar. His rifle wobbled mid-reset. His throat tightened. She didn't shout, her voice cut clean through the noise. "Cease fire, Lane 7, step back 2 paces. Confused looks, the trainer blinked, then repeated it slower, "Cease fire." Tried to obey, barely standing. Morales was already moving, guiding him toward the shade tent. Followed, pulling an ice towel from a cooler with practiced calm. Back of the neck, wrists, slow sips. No panic, no performance. The kid's chest hitched, then steadied. Hovered at the edge of the tent, face tightening. "We had it under control," he said, voice brittle. Met his eyes without raising hers. "Now we do." For a second the air itself hesitated. Opened his mouth to say something about overstepping, about hierarchy, but stopped. The look on his pale face stole the argument. "Get him more shade," said. Morales obeyed, voice firm. "Yes, ma'am." A second instructor stepped closer, clipboard ready like a shield. "We'll need to document the interruption." "Document this," said evenly. Trainee showed signs of heat stress. Intervention initiated, conditions stable. Scribbled something approximate, then looked up, "And your name?" "You'll have it before shift change," she said. He smirked, "We'll see." She didn't answer, she didn't need to. Around them, the laughter on the far side of the range had quieted. Recruits pretended to check magazines, but their eyes kept flicking over. Watching the woman who stepped in like it was the most natural thing in the world. When Sculler returned, he whispered, "Thank you. I didn't want to be the one who—" "You're not," said softly. "You're the one who's still standing. You'll teach someone else how not to fall." He blinked at her like she'd handed him something invisible but heavy, responsibility. Across the range, another rifle jammed. A metallic clack, the kind that precedes panic. Turned, "Stop," she said, not loud but final. "Safety on, eject, lock open, visual clear." The instructor froze, hands half ready to yank the bolt. He hesitated, then followed her words. The jam cleared without injury. A lesson, a quiet one, the kind that sticks. Exhaled. "Who is she again?" he murmured. Smirked, but the edge in it had dulled. "No one." But the tone wasn't conviction, it was defense. Hours later, when range cleanup began, the same laughter that had echoed all morning returned, softer, more uncertain. Because once people see calm competence, mockery feels clumsy. As the sun leaned west, Morales handed out water, voice calm, warm. Sat under the tent, sipping. Strolled by, his swagger a size too big now. "Nice save earlier, gray shirt," he said. "Ever think about a career in remedial babysitting?" Morales stepped forward, voice flat. "Peel one with respect, petty officer." Touched her sleeve lightly. "It's fine." Then, too, she said, "I think about a lot of careers, mostly doing the one in front of me." He laughed, a reflex. "You'll need a real uniform for that." "Supply says tomorrow," she said. "Well, we'll see if you make it to tomorrow." His eyes held him steady. "Everyone does," she said, "until they don't." His smile faltered, because something in her voice remembered things he didn't. The range fell quiet again, the kind of quiet that listens. Later, back in the locker corridor, Morales walked beside her. "Tomorrow's going to be busy," she said. "They always are." They reached the door. Inside, the air felt cooler, like forgiveness in small doses. Outside, the sky burned orange over the grinder. Somewhere down the hall, Laughter tried to rise again, but stopped halfway. Sat on the bench, unlaced her boots. Her left wrist caught the light, a faint surgical scar curving like a comma, not an end, a pause. She brushed it absently, the way people do when memory itches. What would you have done if you were there? Would you cut back with fire, or let silence do the cutting for you? She looked at her reflection in the locker mirror. No rank, no ribbons, just a woman in gray. Tomorrow, the uniform would arrive. But the respect, that would have to be earned. And she'd do it the same way she always had. Quietly, the text alert came before dawn, a vibration against the metal bench, small but certain. Supply uniforms delivered, pickup confirmed. Morning light crept through the locker room window, soft gray, like hesitation before a promise. Steam drifted from the showers. Someone hummed off-key. The bass hadn't yet decided what kind of day it would be. Unzipped her duffel, fingers steady. Beneath a folded PT shirt lay the Ziploc bag she kept sealed like a time capsule. Inside, ribbons dulled with years, edges rubbed smooth by fingers that remembered why each color existed. She didn't take them out. She only looked long enough to remind herself what silence can earn. Her left wrist ached faintly, old surgery, old memory, weather or conscience, she couldn't tell which. The door swung open. Morale stepped in, ponytail damp from an early run, cheeks flushed, breathing the kind of tired that feels like being alive. "Morning." "Morning," said. "Supply text you." "They did." "About time," Morales replied, grinning. "Not that you need pins to be the way you are." Smiled. People hear better when stories wear the shape they expect. They walked the corridor together. Yesterday's laughter had thinned. When people passed now, they didn't look directly, curiosity pretending it wasn't curious. The same voices that had jeered the gray shirt now dropped into quick, polite greetings, half-formed salutes, the uneasy rhythm of guilt learning its manners. At the counter, a second-class petty officer handed over the garment bag with practiced efficiency. "Ma'am, everything's pressed. Collar devices in the left pocket, as requested." "Took it, thank you." "Of course, Commander." The word echoed down the hallway like the first crack of thunder after a long, heavy sky. Morales blinked but didn't look surprised. Her eyes simply warmed recognition, not revelation. They carried the bag back through the waking base. Sprinklers ticked against manicured grass. Flags whispered against poles. A golf cart hummed past with an instructor steering one-handed, pretending not to stare. At the locker room door, Morales paused. "You want space?" Shook her head. "We've got a day to run." She changed in silence, movements precise, deliberate. Each button found its hole like muscle memory knew more than nerves. The khaki settled across her shoulders with a gravity that felt right. Name tape aligned. Command pin centered. The mirror didn't show transformation, it showed truth. Morales watched, arms folded, all hiding behind professionalism. "You wear it quiet," she said. "It's all I know." A knock interrupted, soft, polite. The old contractor with the knee brace stood in the doorway, cap in hand. He didn't lift his eyes. "Ma'am," he said, "nice to see, appropriate fabric." Allowed half a smile. "Nice to see you too." He nodded once, retreated without needing more words. Respect doesn't always require witnesses. Behind him, a few faces gathered mid-stride, stopping, mouth open then closing, two trainees pretending to need the vending machine. Time stretched like elastic. "Range brief in 20, muttered, pretending his clipboard mattered more than what he was seeing. "Right," said, but the word stumbled out, stripped of swagger. He was learning what consonants sound like when they have to carry respect. Picked up her cover, placed it on her head. The hallway looked smaller in the mirror's reflection, as if the walls suddenly remembered what authority felt like. Would you have made a speech right then? Would you have demanded an apology? Or would you let the uniform speak first? She chose the latter. The fabric would tell the truth, her voice could wait. Outside, morning sharpened into heat. The range looked unchanged, same targets, same flags, same sun. But the air moved differently. Eyes tracked her as she crossed the gravel. Cleared his throat. "Commander," he said, testing the title like a new language. "Petty officer," she replied, calm, even. No grudge, no triumph, just gravity. Tried to smile, it fractured halfway. "We didn't have your full details." "You had exactly what you needed," said. "A person to train with care." Silence followed, not uncomfortable, just awake. At the edge of the shade, the old contractor stood again, box of ear pro balanced on one hip. His brace squeaked. He wasn't part of the circle, but somehow the circle had shifted around him, like orbit corrected by gravity. A truck growled up the service road, command stripes on the fender, dust curling behind it. Out stepped CMC Hal, the kind of man whose eyes carried 20 years of names he refused to forget. He spotted her instantly. "Commander Mitchell," he said, voice steady as parade ground gravel. "Master Chief," she answered. "You didn't call ahead." Orders asked for a cold read. He nodded, faint smile. "You always did like your coffee black." His head darted between them. "You two know each other." His glance could have field-stripped a man. "We don't forget the people who pull corpsemen out of hell and send them home breathing." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It filled the range like music nobody wanted to interrupt. Morale straightened unconsciously, swallowed hard. The heat seemed to pause. Then duty reasserted itself. A whistle, a checklist, the day demanding to continue. Moved through it with quiet precision, eyes scanning, notes forming in the margins of her mind. When she corrected, it wasn't command bark. It was guidance shaped like respect. At 900, the first challenge arrived. A recruit at lane 4 fumbled his reload. Magazine crooked, weapon tilted unsafe. The instructor lunged to help, eager and wrong. "Hands," said, stepping in, not shouting, just arriving with authority that settled rather than startled. Safety on, magazine out, bolt locked open, visual clear. The trainee obeyed, trembling. The jam cleared, safe and simple, nodded once. "Well done, reset, this time breathe." Behind her, instructors watched like theater-goers discovering the understudy outshining the lead. Surprise stung. Humility followed. Then the heat struck again. Far end of the line, another recruit folded sideways, weapon sagging. Was already moving. "Shade," she ordered. "Elevate legs, ice points, slow sips." Morales mirrored her every move. The old training flowed between them like a shared language. A second trainee started to wobble, dehydration contagion. Morales caught him, tone firm. "You're good, breathe, stay with me." Hovered nearby, unsure how to help. "Get the medic cart," said. 1 liter cool fluid, no heroics. He ran, grateful for an order that gave him purpose instead of guilt. Followed with a radio finally used for something real. Paramedics en route. Stood back, arms folded. He didn't interfere, he witnessed. Authority, when it's wise, knows when silence is the right command. Worked with quiet precision. Her voice threaded through panic and stitched it closed. When color returned to the recruits' faces, she exhaled slowly. Morales smiled, exhausted and proud. "He'll tell this story one day." "He'll tell it better if he doesn't make himself the hero," said softly. Stepped closer, the sun catching the sweat on his brow. "Commander," he said, words bare of armor, "thank you." "I'm here for the same reason you are," she replied. "To send them home smarter than we found them." He hesitated, then met her gaze. "I was unprofessional." The phrase cost him, but he said it. "You were loud when quiet would have done," she answered. "No cruelty, just truth." He nodded, lesson accepted. "Would you have done the same? When someone hands you the mirror, do you look or break it to prove you're tough?" The bass loudspeaker crackled. "All hands, auditorium at 1100 for quarterly safety stand-down." checked his watch, then turned to her. "Ma'am, it'd be useful if you spoke." "I'm here to observe," said. "Yes, ma'am," replied, gentle smile. "And sometimes the observation is that the room needs a voice." She held the thought, weighed it. "I'll speak." Morales grinned, relief and pride mingling. Looked nervous. Looked like a man ready to listen for once. The auditorium swallowed them in stale air and metal chairs. Fluorescents buzzed overhead. The safety officer clicked through the same slides as last quarter, dehydration charts, range mishaps, statistics no one remembered. "Step to the mic. Before we begin," he said, "I want to acknowledge an observer on deck this week. Some of you met her already without knowing you were meeting her." Murmurs rippled. "Commander Mitchell is here on orders to assess our training, climate, and safety procedures. She's prior enlisted, a former corpsman who earned her commission the hard way, a combat-tested officer whose people go home because the right decisions get made at the right time." He turned, handed her the mic. "Commander, the floor is yours." She didn't rush. She adjusted the stand, looked at the front row, then the back, the way she'd learned to look at a room when lives might depend on whether someone in the last seat felt seen. "Good morning," she said. Her tone was steady, untheatrical. "I'm here to learn, I always am." Eyes followed. "I watched you work the ranges. I watched you hydrate and forget to hydrate. I watched jokes turn into rules and rules turn into jokes. Sometimes that's how a culture breathes. Sometimes that's how it stops." The room went still. She spoke of protocol without naming names, praised where it mattered. "Seaman recruit, you modeled courage by stopping when your body asked you to. You reminded us that awareness is strength, not weakness." His face turned crimson, but pride warmed it soon after. She paused. "Years ago, en route, we brought a broken convoy back to life long enough to fly its people out. We did it by listening faster than panic and letting the quietest competent voice run the room." A long breath passed through the crowd. Even the lights seemed to hum lower. "I wear this uniform because others carried me into it," she said finally. "If you have to laugh, laugh in a way that sends people into their work stronger, not smaller." No one clapped. Not yet. Respect needed silence first. Then slowly people stood, not looking at each other, not waiting for permission, just standing. His hand rose to his cover, not a salute but memory, followed, did too. Morales was already upright, eyes shining. The old contractor lingered near the aisle, cap against his chest, tears hidden in shadow. The goosebumps moved through the room like weather. Nobody ordered them. Outside afterward, the corridor buzzed with thought instead of noise. Found her by the door. "Ma'am," he said softly, "you gave them a clean mirror." "They did the hard part," she replied. Approached, shoulders squared, voice even. "Commander Mitchell, I owe you more than one apology." "You owe them," she said, nodding toward the trainees gathering near the exit. "I do." He turned to them. "I was wrong," he said loudly enough to be heard. "I used my voice like a weapon. That's not leadership." Swallowed, I followed. Didn't gild it. Used those same voices to build something sturdy. Morales grinned. "Then let's start today." Chuckled under his breath, a sound like relief. "We've got a graduation next week," he said too. "The keynote's flexible. Would you consider saying a few words, or just stand where they can see what strength looks like when it doesn't need a microphone?" She smiled, small and certain. "If I'm still on deck, I'll be there." "Copy," he said. One word, a lifetime of respect inside it. The day rolled on, but something fundamental had shifted. Laughter, when it returned, had lost its sharp edges. Orders carried warmth. Even the air conditioning hummed differently, or maybe people were just breathing easier. By the next morning, the base had found a new rhythm, slower, quieter, deliberate, like everyone was thinking through the way they spoke. Respect, it turned out, had a sound. It was the absence of echo after a cruel joke. Felt it the moment she stepped outside. The air was cooler or maybe just lighter. Wind rolled off the lake, carrying the metallic tang of dawn. Morales met her halfway across the grinder, clipboard in hand, ponytail swaying like punctuation. "Commander," she said, smile tucked neatly behind discipline. "Range briefs already distributed. Everyone's early." "Early?" repeated, amused. "Miracles do happen." Morales shrugged. "Nobody wants to be late for inspection today. Word is you might be watching." "Everyone's always watching," said softly. "The question is what they're learning." They fell into step toward the range. Gravel crunched beneath boots, the sound crisp and even. Morales broke the silence first. "Never seen the crew this tense in a good way." "It's the silence after the storm," said. "People are waiting to see if the calm lasts." Morales studied her. "You don't get nervous, do you?" Smiled at that. "Only when I stop listening." At the range was already checking targets, voice subdued, precise. Organized safety logs instead of tossing them onto a table. Stood beside the tent, water bottle in hand, posture than pride. When approached, turned, nodded once. "Morning, Commander." "Petty Officer." "We ran safety drills at 06. Everyone hydrated before stepping out." "Good," she said. "That's leadership." He didn't flinch at the word, maybe because he was finally earning it. Struck idled nearby, command stripes glinting in the early sun. The Master Chief stepped out, hands clasped behind his back, eyes sweeping the field. "Morning, ma'am," he said. "Morning, Master Chief." "Looks different out here," he observed. People learn fast when someone reminds them how. Smouth tugged at a corner. "Remind me not to cross you." Tilted her head. "You already don't." He laughed once, then let the quiet settle again. The morning unfolded smooth, almost routine, a rarity on a range. No jokes that cut, no voices raised for sport. Morales moved down the line, adjusting stances, tone professional, steady. Watched her for a moment. The younger woman had a teacher's rhythm now, confident, patient. A seed had taken root. During the mid-morning lull, motion toward the admin building. "Quick walk, Commander." They left the noise behind. Concrete gave way to grass, then asphalt. The hum of the base rolled around them, generators, distant cadence, seagulls heckling the pier. "You read the reports from Root?" asked finally. "I lived them." "Still haunts half the Corps," he said. "You never talked about it." She shook her head. "Talking doesn't change the weight, carrying it right does." He studied her profile. "You were the senior medic when that convoy burned." "Yes." "And you pulled 6 out under fire." "7," she corrected quietly. "One didn't make it. The report counted wrong." He exhaled, "Still keeping others' names before yours." "Some things don't need to change." They reached the shade of the admin awning. A moment of stillness. Said, "You know, the Admiral didn't just send you to observe. He's been watching this base slip, discipline turning into performance. We needed someone who remembers why rank exists." Looked out toward the range, the heat rising off the berms like breath. "Rank, just a signpost, doesn't tell you where the road ends." "You thinking of staying?" She hesitated. "Observers aren't supposed to leave footprints." "Maybe this place needs one," he said. She didn't answer. The silence said enough. Back on the range, Morales was briefing a new batch of recruits. Her voice carried authority now, the kind born of belief, not fear. "Hydration check. Range safety lines are red. Treat every weapon as loaded. Respect means you keep people breathing." Listened, something like pride flickering behind her calm. Stepped beside her. "She's good." "She is," said. He shifted his weight. "I've been thinking about what you said about loud versus quiet. Guess I've been loud for a long time." "It's what you were taught," she said gently. "Volume looks like confidence until someone shows you stillness." He nodded, eyes on the recruits. "You'll be in my report, right?" "Probably." "Hope it's not all bad." Depends on tomorrow. He smiled, the first real one she'd seen on him. At noon, clouds gathered, a storm threatening the edge of the lake. The air thickened, heavy with static. They called a break, trainees retreating under the canopy. Morales handed out water, feels like something coming. Glanced at the horizon, it usually is. Thunder rolled once, then stopped short of rain. The temperature dropped just enough to fool you. That's when the radio crackled. Command post to range control, inspection team inbound, ETA 20 minutes. Frowned, didn't have that on the schedule. Neither did I, said. The crew scrambled. Clipboards appeared, gloves tightened, posture straightened. The transformation was sudden, complete, nerves disguised as professionalism. Turned to her. Commander, you want us to rehearse the safety brief. No, she said. I want you to do your job. The truth rehearses itself. They lined up as the convoy of black SUVs rolled in 3 cars, tinted windows, flags on antennas. Out stepped a captain, 2 inspectors, and a civilian in plain clothes with a tablet, the kind of visit that usually ends with someone's career rearranged. Stepped forward, greeting crisp, Captain. At ease, Master Chief, the officer said. We're here for an unscheduled safety audit. Word is you've had some incidents. His eyes flicked too. We've addressed them. The captain followed the glance, then checked his list. And you are? Stepped forward, calm. Commander Mitchell, assigned by Admiral for independent observation. Recognition passed across the captain's face like a slow tide. Ah, so you're the one who's been shaking the dust off. Just calling things what they are, she said. He nodded. Good, we'll see how much dust is left. The inspection began, tables checked, logs reviewed, recruits questioned. The civilian noted everything, stylus flicking like judgment. Morales guided them through hydration stations, explaining shade cycles and cooling protocols. Her voice didn't waver. The captain watched, arms crossed. Petty officer, you implemented this. Yes, sir, based on Commander Mitchell's recommendations. Didn't correct her. It wasn't about credit, it was about culture. When they reached the far lane, the civilian paused, squinting at a maintenance record. This signature's missing. Stepped up. That was mine, sir. I completed the check but forgot to initial. Correction made. Honest, immediate, no excuses. The captain glanced at. Looks like your honesty drills are working. They're self-inflicted, she said. By the time the convoy left, the first drops of rain finally broke through, soft, forgiving. The captain turned at the door of his car. Good work, Commander. The Admiral will be pleased. Exhaled as engines faded. That could gone worse. It could, said, but it didn't. Morales grinned. Feels like we passed. Looked at her. Passing, easy. Keeping the standard, that's the hard part. They packed up under drizzle that smelled like new beginnings. Trainees moved faster, quieter. Nobody complained. Back in the locker corridor, the air was warm again. The laughter that returned wasn't cruel this time, it was release. Morales dropped onto a bench beside, towel around her shoulders. I think they're starting to get it, she said. They will, replied, because you'll remind them when I'm gone. Morales blinked. You're leaving. Observers move on. There's always another place that needs listening. That's not fair, Morales said. We just learned how to be better. Smiled faintly. Then you already know what to teach. Outside, thunder rolled again, low and distant. The storm had passed but wanted to be remembered. Morales hesitated, then asked, Do you ever get tired of fixing what others break? Looked at her wrist, flexed it once. It's not fixing, it's reminding. People already know the right thing, they just forget when it's easier to laugh. The door opened. Stood there, rain dripping from his cover. Commander, he said, there's talk that the Admiral himself might visit after hearing the inspection report. Raised an eyebrow. That'll make some people nervous. Probably me most of all. "You'll be fine," she said. "Just keep doing what you're doing." He nodded, hesitated. "If I could go back to that first day, I'd do it different." "You just did," she said. He left, words trailing like gratitude too awkward to say aloud. Morales looked at her. "How do you stay that calm?" "By remembering it's not about me." She gathered her things, the uniform still sharp despite the rain. The air smelled of wet earth and detergent, two worlds she understood. In the mirror near the exit, she caught her reflection again. Same eyes, same steady face, but something around the edges had softened, not weakness, understanding. The bass behind her hummed with quiet order. The laughter echoing down the hall now sounded human, not hungry. Would you have noticed the change if you walked those halls? Would you have realized that dignity doesn't arrive in speeches, but in small, invisible corrections? Picked up her duffel, slung it over her shoulder, and stepped into the fatting storm. The sky had turned silver. The air smelled like renewal. Tomorrow there would be another drill, another test, another chance to see who remembered. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like weight. It felt like peace. The Admiral's convoy was due at 900, but the base began holding its breath hours earlier. By dawn, the grinder was immaculate, painted lines gleaming, flags trimmed, even the gulls circling quieter than usual. Someone had polished the brass plate outside range control until it threw sunlight like a signal mirror. Even laughter, once feral, now came in careful, edited bursts. Felt the shift before she saw it. The way nervous energy rearranges air, turning routine into ceremony. She'd seen it on hospital decks before generals walked through triage tents, everyone straightening spines, forgetting how to breathe. Morales jogged beside her, tablet clutched to her chest. "They've got formation at 0830, ma'am. Admiral's bringing staff." Nodded, eyes calm. "Formations are easy, truth's harder." Morales grinned despite herself. "You say stuff like that and I start quoting you to people." "Then quote this," said, "We're all temporary." They reached range 4. Was already there, supervising target repair, voice measured, disciplined. He caught sight of her and straightened. "Morning, Commander." "Petty officer." He gestured to the line. Everything squared away, safety cards double-checked, no shortcuts today. "No shortcuts any day," she corrected softly. He nodded, accepting the quiet weight of it. Appeared from the admin wing, coffee in hand, eyes scanning the sky. "Looks like a clean morning," he said. "You ready for?" "Always," replied, but a small pulse beat in her throat anyway. Had been her commanding officer en route, before the convoy burned, before the name became shorthand for loss. He'd sent her citation through channels afterward, but they hadn't spoken since. Some memories wait years for unfinished sentences. At 8:57, engines growled across the lot. 3 sedans, 1 black SUV. The Admiral stepped out first, tall, silver-haired, eyes still sharp enough to cut through ceremony. The staff trailed behind like a smaller echo of his gravity. "Commander Mitchell," he said, voice even but touched with memory. "It's been a long road." "Yes, sir." He studied her uniform, the rows of muted color on her chest. "I read your preliminary notes. Subtle, thorough. You've got this place moving in the right direction." "People did the work," she said. "I just gave them space to hear themselves." He smiled faintly. "Same tone you used under fire." The silence between them filled with unspoken things, dust, blood, the noise of rotor blades carrying the half-living away. Morales felt the tension but didn't understand its depth. She only straightened instinctively, as if proximity to memory required posture. "Broke first. I'll need a live demonstration before we meet the trainees." "Range is yours, sir." They walked the line together, and 3 staff officers scribbling notes, called commands. Morales managed hydration checks, executed every drill cleanly. The air hummed with competence, the kind that can't be faked. Impressive recovery, one inspector whispered. Last month's report was chaos. Didn't turn, orders contagious, so is neglect. The Admiral's eyes flicked toward her, approval shaded with something personal. You always had the inconvenient habit of telling the truth. Only when people forget it. They reached the last lane, targets reset, safety flags crisp, spoke low enough for her alone. They don't know what you did at, I thought maybe you preferred it that way. She kept her gaze forward. Medics don't keep score. Maybe they should. Before she could answer, the loudspeaker cracked, an urgent stutter of static. Medical to Hangar 12. Repeat, medical emergency at Hangar 12. Swore under his breath, that's 2 clicks north. Was already moving. The crowd parted on instinct. Morales grabbed the medkit cart, sprinting to catch up. Sirens followed. The hangar smelled of jet fuel and adrenaline. A maintenance tech lay on the floor beside a training jet, his arm twisted beneath him, a pool of crimson spreading under hydraulic fluid. The hum of machinery drowned out the frightened voices. Drop to her knees. Lock out the system, she ordered. Someone killed the power. The hydraulic hiss died. She tore open gauze, pressed hard against the wound. Morales pressured dressing, and get me the coolant towels from the locker. Morales moved, fast and steady. The Admiral and hovered behind, silent witnesses. Pulse weak, murmured, shock setting in. She glanced at the young man's. Barely 20, the same age as the Marines she'd patched under the burning sky of. Her hands remembered. Pressure, reassure, control bleeding, control fear. Stay with me, she said. You're going home for dinner, copy. He tried to nod. Air rasped through his teeth. The siren of the base ambulance grew louder. Morales crouched beside her, sweat cutting trails through grime. Vitals improving, she said. Didn't answer. She just kept pressure steady, the way she always had, calm against chaos. When medics arrived, she briefed them in clipped sentences, then stood, wiping her hands on a towel that used to be white. The Admiral watched, expression unreadable. You never stop being a corpsman, do you? He said quietly. No, sir. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying away the metallic scent of blood and machine oil. Caught up, he'll make it thanks to you. Nodded once. He'll remember Morales, not me. That's how it should be. The Admiral's gaze lingered. You could stayed in medicine. Instead, you kept choosing command. Because command needs medics who remember what pain looks like. He smiled, small and sad. You haven't changed. Neither has the work, she said. By the time they returned to the range, the crew was waiting, faces tight, questions restrained, stepped forward. He okay? He will be. A collective exhale. Even the wind sounded relieved. The Admiral addressed the gathered ranks. What you saw today was not an inspection. It was proof that training is life. You have leadership here worth following. He gestured toward. Commander Mitchell reminds us that authority isn't loud, it's capable. A ripple moved through the formation. Respect, no longer forced. Afterward, as the Admiral prepared to leave, he drew her aside. I owe you something I never said after. You saved lives I'd already written off, mine included. She met his eyes. You owe me nothing, sir. We all just did our part. He studied her face, the faint scar on her wrist. You still carry it. Every day. He nodded, the kind of gesture that closes a long open file in both minds. Take care of this place a little longer. After this week, I'm recommending you for the safety command at the regional level. She blinked. That's not why I came. I know, he said. That's why you'll do it right. The convoy rolled out, engines fatting into distance. The range exhaled. The tension that had gripped everyone loosened by degrees. Morales approached, rubbing her temples. Ma'am, that was something. Looked toward the hangar across the field, where medics still moved like disciplined shadows. It's just work, Morales, the kind that matters. You ever going to tell us what was? Paused. It was a place that reminded us how thin the line is between doing your job and losing yourself in it. Morales studied her a moment longer, then nodded slowly. Copy that. The afternoon drifted into paperwork and quiet tasks. Supervised cleanup, voice calm, patient. Practiced magazine changes until muscle memory took over. Even stopped joking long enough to mean his job. Near dusk, found sitting on the bleachers, the sky painted copper above the lake. You thinking about taking that promotion? I'm thinking about what happens when I leave, she said. Whether it stays better or goes back to easy. It'll hold, he said. You change the temperature. She smiled faintly. Maybe, but heat always comes back. Then you come back too, he said. She didn't promise. She just watched the horizon until it blurred. When night settled, the base lights flickered on one by one. Somewhere music played low, a trainee speaker, half forbidden, half forgiven. Morales passed by, pausing. Heading out, Commander. Not yet. Want company. Always. They sat in silence a while, the kind that heals. The wind carried laughter from the barracks, gentle, harmless now. Morales tilted her head. You think they'll remember today? They will, said. Maybe not the details, but they'll remember how it felt to stand straight without fear. Morales nodded. That's rare. Doesn't have to be. The younger woman studied her. You know, when I first saw you in that gray shirt, I thought you were lost. I was exactly where I needed to be. Morales smiled. You really talk like that all the time. Only when someone's listening. A pause. The lake breeze smelled of rain and jet fuel and something like peace. Tomorrow's graduation, Morales said, making you speak right. So he says, you nervous? Looked at the stars rising above the flagpole. Every time I have to remind people that decency still outranks ego, I get a little nervous. Means it still matters. The flag snapped once in the wind, clean, sharp, alive. What would you have felt sitting there under that sky? Pride, regret, maybe both. Because strength isn't the absence of doubt. It's what you do while it's sitting in your chest, asking if you're enough. Stood, brushed off her khakis. Come on, big day tomorrow. Morales rose beside her. Yes, ma'am. They walked back toward the barracks, silhouettes against the fading copper. Two figures carrying quiet authority through a world still learning how to listen. And somewhere in the distance, the sound of the lake folded into the hum of the bass, a heartbeat steady enough to believe in. The morning of graduation came dressed in gold light and restless hearts. Flags cracked in the wind like old promises remembering themselves. The grinder gleamed under a fresh coat of pride. The recruits stood in formation, polished boots, pressed uniforms, faces that had learned how to wear respect. Stood off to the side of the platform, arms folded behind her back, not in command posture, in witness, watching them. It wasn't her ceremony, not technically, but somehow every eye found her anyway. Morales stood beside the bleachers, whispering last-minute instructions to the color detail. Checked the speaker system twice, as if redemption could be wired through good sound. Approached, cover in hand. You sure about speaking, Commander? You've already said more with your presence than most do with a microphone. She gave him a small, knowing look. They deserve a few words to carry home. He nodded, a man who'd long since learned not to argue with quiet conviction. Music swelled, the kind that reaches every heart, even the cynical ones. Rows of recruits snapped to attention. The admiral wasn't present, but his influence lingered like weather. Today was for the new, for what they would become when nobody was watching. Took the mic first. His voice rolled steady, practiced. Ladies, and today we celebrate not perfection but growth. These sailors arrive strangers and leave teammates. They've learned that strength isn't noise. It's knowing when to listen. A pause, then a glance toward her. Commander Mitchell, would you do us the honor? Stepped forward. The wind lifted a strand of her hair, brushed it across her cheek. She didn't adjust it. She let the imperfection stand. She looked at the crowd, rows of young faces squinting into the light. Some confident, some scared, some pretending to be neither. Behind them, instructors shifted awkwardly, knowing part of this speech might be for them. "Good morning," she said, no script, no notes, just the truth she'd carried too long. "I wasn't supposed to be here as your speaker. I came as an observer, to watch how you train, how you learn, how you treat each other when no one's keeping score." The wind quieted like it wanted to hear. "I saw the best of you. I saw the tired of you. And I saw how laughter can either build a person or bury them." A few heads bowed, remembering the corridor, the jokes, the gray shirt. "I didn't need to know your ranks to understand your character," she continued. "Respect isn't issued with a uniform. It's proven when you choose not to look away." Morales's eyes glistened, stood perfectly still. "Some of you know me now as Commander Mitchell," she said, voice gentling. "But before the commission, I was a corpsman. I've knelt in dust beside people who would never go home. I've held their hands until they remembered their names. And what I learned in those moments is this: courage isn't loud. It doesn't shout orders or chase applause. It just does the work, even when no one's watching." The air held its breath. She looked at in the second row. "I saw courage on this range in a recruit who stopped before his body quit. That moment taught everyone here what survival looks like. Courage isn't about charging forward, it's about knowing when to pause." Swallowed hard, blinking too fast. Continued. "If you remember anything from this place, remember this: decency is discipline. Leadership begins the second you realize your silence can protect someone else's dignity." A single gull cried overhead, the sound slicing through quiet like punctuation. She smiled faintly. "When I arrived, people laughed. It's natural. We mock what we don't understand. But the goal isn't to silence laughter, it's to teach it to grow up, to make it kind." Even the wind seemed to nod. "I've seen enough battlefields and training fields to know this truth. You don't need to wear stripes to carry honor. You just need to act like someone who deserves them." She stepped back, let the silence breathe. The crowd didn't move. Applause would felt too small for what she'd given them. Cleared his throat, emotion hitching on discipline. "Thank you, Commander." She nodded once, returned to her seat. For a moment the bass didn't sound like machinery or orders. It sounded like heartbeat. Later, after the ceremony, Morales caught up to her behind the bleachers. "That was something else," she said, eyes bright. Smiled softly. "It was just a reminder." Morales shook her head. "No, it was a reset." Before could reply, appeared, cover tucked under his arm. "Commander." She turned. "I wanted to say," he stopped, searching for words that didn't sound rehearsed. "Thank you for not embarrassing me when you could have, for showing me what leadership actually looks like." She tilted her head slightly. "You did the rest yourself." "I'll keep doing it," he said, conviction in his tone now. "I promise." Nodded. "Good. Make sure Morales keeps you honest." Morales smirked. "Oh, I will." The three of them stood there in the sunlight, silent a moment, not awkward silence, but the kind that seals a chapter. Approach from across the lot, walking slower than usual. "Command wants your full report by end of week," he said. "An admiral asked if you'll accept that regional post." Watched the recruits filing out, hugging, laughing, laughter that didn't bite anymore. "Still thinking," she said. Nodded. "You do good there." She looked at him, a small smile forming. "You mean I'd cause trouble?" "Same thing," he said. Morales chuckled under her breath. Turned her gaze back toward the grinder. The flag above it whipped steady in the breeze. "You ever notice," she said, "that flags never move unless there's resistance?" Followed her line of sight. "Guess that's true of people too." Hours later the base quieted again. Ceremony over, adrenaline drained. Sat by the benches near range 4, sipping lukewarm coffee. Morales joined her, carrying 2 water bottles. "You ever take a day off?" Morales asked. "Sometimes I just change the kind of work." Morales laughed softly. "You sound like my grandma." "I'll take that as a compliment." They watched recruits in the distance cleaning gear, the sun catching brass. Everything seemed ordinary again, but it was. Ordinary had been redefined. "You think they'll keep this up when you're gone?" Morales asked. Took a slow sip before answering. "Some will, some won't. The ones who do will change the ones who don't." Morales nodded, then said quietly, "You changed me." Didn't look at her. "No, you decided to change. I just reminded you it was possible." A few minutes passed. Then Morales said, "You ever tell anyone what happened at?" His hand tightened on the cup. "Not in words." "Maybe you should." "Maybe I just did." They both sat in the weight of that sentence, quiet knowing. Evening settled slowly. The sky turned amber, then bruised blue. The range lights flickered on, pools of white cutting through dusk. Passed by carrying a crate of spent shells and gave them a quick, grateful nod. Morales grinned. "That kid's going to make it." "He already did," said. They watched him disappear down the path, another small light moving forward. His voice came from behind them. "Formation at 1600, Commander. Short one. Just practice," he says. She frowned. "Practice for what?" He smiled. "Respect in public." By the time they reached the grinder, half the base had gathered. The recruits formed a line, instructors behind them. Stood at the front, expression unreadable. "Attention to orders," he said, though there were none to read. "We're going to practice something simple, how to mean it when you say thank you." Then he turned to Petty Officer. Stepped forward, heart pounding visibly in his throat. "Commander," he said, loud enough for all to hear, "on behalf of this team, I apologize for my words, my assumptions, and my disrespect. I'll spend the rest of my service proving I can be better than that." The air around them stilled. Met his gaze. "Thank you, Petty Officer. Leadership is repair work, not perfection." He nodded, shoulders lowering, relief settling into purpose. Then, without cue, the entire formation lifted their hands in salute. No order, no music. Just one clean gesture that held for a heartbeat longer than custom required. Returned its small, deliberate, minimal motion, maximum meaning. When they dropped their hands, the day itself seemed to breathe out. What would you have felt standing there? Pride? Forgiveness? Maybe both, because redemption isn't dramatic, it's quiet and it takes time. That night the base was softer. Laughter spilled through corridors without hurting. Morales sat outside her quarters, humming a song from home. Wrote a letter to his parents that started with, "Today, I didn't quit." Stayed late at the range, cleaning rifles alone, not for inspection, for care. Walked the perimeter once more. The lake wind lifted her collar. She looked toward the distant hangar, where the young tech was recovering, alive because the right hands had remembered what mattered. The moonlight brushed the scar on her wrist. She flexed it gently, felt the pulse beneath. Old wounds don't vanish. They just learn new work, reminders instead of burdens. She stopped by the flagpole. The rope clinked softly against metal. She stood there for a long moment, the uniform catching the silver light. Sometimes, she thought, dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And beneath that quiet truth, the base slept stronger than it had been, ready for whatever came next. The lake smelled like metal and rain. 2 days after graduation, the air carried that restless energy that always follows endings, half relief, half unfinished business. Woke before reveille, the habit of someone who still listened for distant alarms. The base lay quiet, dew silvering the grinder. Somewhere, gulls screamed at nothing and everything. She brewed coffee in the admin kitchenette, steam rising into silence. Her report sat half-finished on the desk, data neat, sentences clean, feelings folded between the lines. Numbers could measure improvement, they couldn't measure redemption. A knock broke the stillness. Morales leaned in, hair damp, eyes brighter than sleep should allow. "Morning, ma'am, you're up early." Couldn't pretend to rest. "I figured." Word came down, the Admiral, sending a shuttle at 1400. "They want you in Norfolk by nightfall." Nodded, so the rumor's real. Morales hesitated. "You're really taking the post." "I'm taking the responsibility." "You'll come back." Smiled faintly. "I never really leave the people I teach." Morales looked at the report on the desk. "Need help finishing it." "Just the last paragraph," said. "The part where you decide whether this was worth it." Morales frowned. "How do you decide that?" "You don't. You trust what stayed changed when you stopped watching." Outside, the sky was low and gray, clouds like unspoken thoughts. By mid-morning, the base stirred awake. Recruits filed toward classes. Instructors barked without venom. Crossed the lot carrying a stack of safety binders. He spotted, straightened instinctively, and gave a crisp nod. "Morning, Commander." "Morning, Petty Officer. You keeping the tone steady?" "Yes, ma'am. I even caught double-checking log entries before coffee." "Miracles never end," she said, smiling. He laughed, quick and easy, the kind of laugh that didn't hurt anyone. As he walked off, Morales said quietly, "He's a different man." His gaze followed him. "That's the point." They reached Range 4. The sun fought through the clouds, painting the berms in dull gold. Trainees moved through drills with quiet focus, watched every motion, every hesitation. Her eyes caught the small tremor in one recruit's hands. "Lane 8, she murmured. "Too tense, breathe him through it." Morales nodded, already walking. She didn't wait for orders anymore. Joined her at the shade tent, 2 coffees in hand. "Figured you'd forget breakfast." She accepted one. "You figured right." He sipped his. "You wrote the report yet?" "Almost." He studied her expression. "You ever notice you talk less the closer you get to leaving? It's easier to listen when you're about to say goodbye." He chuckled softly. "Still quoting yourself, huh?" She shook her head. "I just recycle lessons until someone else owns them." They stood in companionable silence, then said, "You heard from?" "This morning." He said the board approved the regional safety post. "Congratulations," he said, but his tone held weight. "You sure you want that life again? Paperwork, briefings, no field to walk." Looked across the range. "Every report is a field master chief. You just can't see the blood on the paper." He nodded slowly. "Still talking to you?" "Some memories don't talk, they hum." The word hung there, heavy and familiar. He didn't press. At noon, the call came. The tech from Hangar 12 wanted to see her before she left. Morales offered to drive. The hospital annex smelled of antiseptic and hope. Lay propped in bed, arm wrapped, color back in his cheeks. When entered, he tried to sit. "Commander, they told me you." "Saved you," she finished gently. "You saved yourself by not panicking. I just reminded you to breathe." He smiled awkwardly. "Still, thank you. I heard stories about you, the thing." Her jaw tightened, but she didn't flinch. Stories tend to add color. "Sir," he said, then caught himself. "Ma'am, my dad was Army medic. Said the hardest part wasn't blood. It was what stayed in your head afterward." He was right. You ever get rid of it? "No," she said. "You just build better shelves." He laughed softly, then looked down at his bandaged arm. "Guess I've got some shelving to do." "Start by drinking your water," she said, "and by not trying to impress anyone for a while." He grinned. "Yes, ma'am." Outside the ward, Morales walked beside her, quiet. "That thing," she said, almost whispering. "Was it as bad as they say?" Kept her eyes on the corridor ahead. "Worse, but it taught me something." "What's that?" "That no one survives alone, not even commanders." They reached the exit. Rain had started again, thin, hesitant drops tapping metal. The air smelled like wet earth and machine oil. At 1400, the shuttle arrived, gray, utilitarian, humming with purpose, and Morales waited by the tarmac, stood a few paces behind, posture straight, expression uncertain. "You sure you can't delay a week?" Morales asked. "Orders don't wait for comfort." "Then I'll keep things steady till you're back," Morales said. "And if you don't come back, I'll make sure what you built doesn't crack." Smiled, proud and tired. "That's all I need to hear." Extended his hand. She shook it firmly. "It's been an honor, Commander." "The honor's mutual, Master Chief. Keep them honest." He nodded once. "Always." Stepped forward awkwardly. "Permission to speak freely." "Always." He took a breath. "You changed everything, the range, the crew, me. I don't know how to repay that." "You already did," she said. "You started listening." He swallowed hard. "Guess I'll keep at it." "Do." She turned toward the shuttle stairs. Rain darkened her khaki sleeves. The engines throbbed low, waiting. She paused halfway up, looked back, Morales standing straight despite tears, his hand raised in a small salute beside him, jaw set, learning still. She saluted back, not ceremony, connection. Then she stepped inside. The cabin smelled of new metal and recycled air. She buckled in, the duffel at her feet, her old ribbon rack zipped in its plastic sleeve. Through the window, the base blurred as rain streaked across glass. She closed her eyes. The hum of the engines merged with memory. Sand, smoke, rotor blades, the smell of burned rubber and fear. Route. The scene rose unbidden years ago. Another desert, another sky. Convoy ambushed on a supply route, trucks burning bright enough to make noon look dim. She was a petty officer then, crawling through wreckage, pulling the living away from the dead. Every shout had sounded like her name. She remembered its voice over the comms. "We're losing them." And hers quiet, unwavering, "Not yet." The memory tilted, sound fading, light thinning, heartbeat slowing. The hum of the shuttle became the thump of helicopter blades carrying the wounded out. Back in the present, she opened her eyes. The scar on her wrist throbbed, old shrapnel memory, not pain, just reminder. A voice crackled from the cockpit. "Commander Mitchell, ETA 1 hour to Norfolk." "Copy," she said. She leaned back. Outside, clouds thinned, sunlight cutting through like revelation. She thought of Morales teaching the next class, of turning sarcasm into mentorship, of writing letters home, of learning to live with a scar that meant survival. Everywhere she went, pieces of her stayed behind, invisible but alive. What would you have done, sitting there above the clouds, leaving behind the place you just repaired? Would you feel peace, loss, both? Watched the horizon shift from gray to gold. The world below looked smaller, manageable, almost innocent. She knew better. Innocence doesn't come back, it just learns new duty. She unzipped the duffel, took out the old ribbon rack, held it for a moment in her palm. The colors had faded, fabric frayed, but every thread carried a story, some of victory, some of survival, some of guilt that time hadn't dissolved. She smiled faintly. "You did good work," she whispered to herself, to the ghosts, to the uniform. "We all did." The shuttle dipped slightly, engines shifting pitch. She tightened her, eyes steady on the fatting storm below. Sometimes leadership means walking away so that others can lead. Sometimes silence is the loudest command you give. As the clouds opened, sunlight spilled across the cockpit, filling the cabin in gold. It caught her face, the faint scar, the calm behind her eyes. She thought of the laughter that once filled the corridor, sharp, careless. Thought of how easily it had turned to respect. Thought of how much work it takes to hold that transformation. And for the first time in years, she allowed herself a full breath that didn't hurt. Below her, the base disappeared into distance. Above her, the sky stretched unbroken, a reminder that dignity, once learned, doesn't fade, it travels. Norfolk wasn't what she expected. It was bigger, louder, shinier, the kind of place that wore medals on walls instead of hearts. Glass buildings lined the pier, reflecting the steel hulls of ships that seemed to hum with restrained arrogance. Everywhere she looked, something buzzed: phones, radios, people who spoke fast and listened slow. Her shuttle touched down beside a row of officers waiting under umbrellas. The wind smelled of salt and fuel. She stepped out, boots striking wet tarmac with the soft authority of someone who didn't need to announce arrival. A tall man in a blue jacket approached, hand extended. "Commander Mitchell, Captain Lawrence, welcome to Norfolk Command. We've heard quite a bit about you." Shook his hand. "That usually means I should be nervous." He smiled, practiced but polite. "Not at all. You're inheriting the Regional Safety and Ethics Division. Big responsibility." She followed him toward the building. "Safety and ethics," she murmured. "Strange pairing, feels like the second one's always optional." He chuckled. "You'll fit right in." Inside, everything gleamed: marble floors, digital displays cycling through mission statistics, portraits of officers staring down like silent judges. It smelled of order, ambition, and coffee burned an hour too long. Her office overlooked the bay. A clean desk, 2 chairs, no personal photos. On the far wall, a motto etched in metal: "Standard is honor." She ran a finger over the words. "We'll see." By afternoon, she'd met her new team, 12 officers, most younger than she'd expected. Polished, efficient, restless. They'd read her file, watched her rise from corpsman to commander, and weren't sure yet whether to fear or admire her. She stood at the head of the table. "You all know my record, forget it. It doesn't matter here. What matters is why I'm here, to find the small cracks before they turn into loss." One officer, Lieutenant Cole, raised an eyebrow. "Ma'am, with respect, Norfolk's not a field base. We don't exactly have firefights in the hallway." Met his gaze evenly. "Then you've never seen what paperwork can destroy." A quiet ripple went through the room. Another officer spoke. "We deal with reports, not reality. Most of what we see never touches people directly." Smiled faintly. "Everything touches people directly. You just haven't stayed in one place long enough to see it." They didn't know how to respond. She let the silence hang, not to intimidate, but to teach attention. After the meeting, Cole followed her to the corridor. "Ma'am, about earlier. I didn't mean disrespect." "I know," she said. "You meant assumption, it's common." He frowned slightly. "You talk like everything hides a lesson." "It does," she said. "The trick is surviving long enough to understand it." That night she stayed late, reading archived reports. Pages of minor accidents, near misses, disciplinary notes written like whispers. Every one of them carried a pattern: rushed procedure, tired judgment, silence that became tragedy. She underlined 3 names, different units, same issue: maintenance records, small things, harmless until the day they are. She leaned back, the hum of the office soft around her. Outside, lightning flashed over the bay, quick and cold. Her communicator buzzed, a message from Morales. "Range 4's holding steady. Running classes like you taught, miss your chaos." Smiled, she typed back. "Chaos teaches faster than calm. Keep listening." She set the device down, looked out the window again. For a moment, she thought she saw her reflection wearing the old gray shirt, sleeves rolled, hair windblown, not the crisp commander starring back. Just her before the rank. She whispered, "Don't lose her." The next morning, she met with Captain Lawrence for briefing. He gestured toward a digital map. "You've got 3 active investigations. Minor issues. Nothing like your field work, but command takes them seriously." Define minor. Unauthorized overtime reports, missing safety audits, nothing dramatic. "Nothing's dramatic until someone bleeds," she said. He gave a small, careful smile. "I read your file, you don't let things slide." "I prefer balance to slide." After the meeting, she drove out to one of the docks where one of the flagged units operated, Maintenance Crew 19B. The rain had eased, leaving puddles that mirrored cranes and sky. Men worked quietly, their motions mechanical, uninterested. A foreman spotted her. "Ma'am, didn't know we had inspection today." "You didn't," she said. "That's why it'll be honest." He blinked. "Is this about that file we sent up, the missing signatures?" "Yes, but that's not what's missing." He frowned. "Ma'am." She pointed to a maintenance log. "This entry's from a prior week. You can tell by the dust marks. Someone wanted it to look complete." The man shifted uneasily. "No one meant harm, it's just paperwork." "Paperwork's the reason a jet once fell from the sky on my watch," she said quietly. "There's no such thing as just paperwork." Her tone wasn't anger, it was memory, the kind that stops denial cold. By the time she returned to Norfolk Command, word had spread. The new commander didn't bluff, didn't shout, didn't forget. She simply acted and people adjusted. That evening she found a sealed envelope on her desk. No sender, just a short note inside. "If you really want to fix what's broken, look at replacement logs." Her breath paused. Yes. The word looked wrong on fresh paper, like a scar reopened. She checked the system. Replacement Operation Meridian had been final command before retirement. Officially clean. No casualties. But as she scrolled through the logs, she saw irregularities, duplicate timestamps, missing inventory, the kind of data that suggested something was being hidden. She sat back, heartbeat rising. The past had just followed her here. She stared out at the bay, ships anchored, storm returning. Somewhere, thunder rolled over the water like a warning. She whispered, "Not again." The next morning, she confronted Captain Lawrence. "Sir, why is Meridian's data redacted in internal archives?" He looked surprised. "That's file high clearance." "I had clearance on. I should have it here." He hesitated. "Commander, if you start digging into records, you'll make enemies you don't need." She met his eyes steadily. "I don't dig for enemies, sir. I dig for truth." He sighed. "You've only been here 48 hours. Then it's already a long week." He didn't stop her. Maybe he knew he couldn't. That night, alone in her office, she unlocked the restricted data archive. The system blinked, protested, then yielded. A series of reports filled the screen, incomplete manifests, altered casualty logs. Among them, one entry carried her name. Mitchell L. Field Liaison, Evacuation Support Post-Action Debrief, suppressed for review. Her stomach dropped, suppressed, not filed, not forgotten, hidden. The memory surged, dust, fire, the sound of a man shouting over the radio. "We can't lose those numbers. Wants full count." It hadn't made sense then. Now it did. They'd doctored the casualty report to protect a reputation, and she'd unknowingly signed a summary that made it possible. She sat in the glow of the screen, the room suddenly too quiet. Her reflection in the glass looked older, colder. She whispered, "So this is what dignity costs." The communicator buzzed again, another message from Morales. "Heard called your office today. You good?" Typed back, "Just revisiting history. The kind that bleeds. Always." She set the device down, eyes still on the data. The past had waited patiently, and now it demanded to be seen. Outside, the storm broke, rain hammering against the windows like 1,000 small truths. The base lights flickered once, then steadied. Stood by the glass, watching lightning arc across the bay. She could almost hear his voice again, calm, commanding, certain, and beneath it the screams of those she couldn't save. She pressed a hand against the window, rain streaking behind it. "I told them was over," she murmured, "but maybe it never ended." And in that moment, she knew the next choice would define her more than any rank ever had. Whether to stay silent or speak a truth that might tear everything open again. The kind of truth that never stays buried quietly. The summons came before dawn. Encrypted, unsigned, and brief. "Meetings 900, room." Read it twice. The font looked like command, sharp, efficient, confident. the kind that never expected to be questioned. She closed the message and looked out her window. Norfolk still slept under fog, cranes like ghosts reaching for ships that hadn't yet woken. Somewhere far below, the sea hit the pier with that endless, patient rhythm, as if time itself was waiting for her decision. She put on her uniform slowly, not out of hesitation, out of ritual. Every button, every fold reminded her who she'd been before the titles, before the applause, before the quiet betrayals. By the time she entered room 4A, was already there. He looked older, grayer around the temples, deeper lines across the eyes, but his stance hadn't changed, back straight, jaw set, voice still built for authority. "Commander Mitchell," he said, tone neutral, "you've been busy." "Stop just short of the table, just catching up on old files, sir." He gestured to the seat opposite. "Sit." She didn't. "I'll stand." He sighed, the kind of sigh that carries both exhaustion and warning. "You were always difficult. And you were always certain." A silence stretched. The rain outside ticked against glass. He leaned forward. "You found the documents." "I found the lies." His gaze didn't flinch. They weren't lies, they were protections. For who? For everyone who still needed to believe we hadn't failed. Stepped closer, voice low. "We did fail, and then we failed again when we buried it." His hand twitched once on the table. "Do you think I wanted to sign off on that report? You think I slept after it? We lost good men. We lost order. I couldn't lose trust too." "You lost truth," she said. He looked up at her then, eyes wet with something he wouldn't name. "Truth doesn't hold the line, Commander. Discipline does." "Discipline built on silence isn't order," she said. "It's decay dressed as loyalty." He stood now, matching her height, the space between them heavy with shared ghosts. "You don't understand what it's like up here," he said quietly. "Every choice costs lives one way or another. You choose the smaller wound." Met his gaze, unflinching. "And I'm telling you, you can't build a future on the bones of a lie." The room felt smaller, like the walls themselves were listening. He turned away, walking to the window. "I read your Norfolk reports, efficient, precise. You've earned your reputation. Don't ruin it chasing ghosts." "They're not ghosts," she said. "They're names, and they deserve to be remembered correctly." He didn't turn. "If you reopen, it'll tear this command apart. Then maybe it deserves to break." The silence that followed was long, thin, electric. Finally he said, "You always had that tone, like a medic scolding a war." She allowed a small, sad smile. "That's exactly what I'm doing." He faced her again, jaw tightening. "You'll submit your findings to me before you send them to the board." "I can't do that." "Can't or?" She looked at him. The man who'd once saved her life, the officer who'd taught her discipline, the leader she'd believed in before she understood his limits. "Both," she said. He exhaled slowly. "You're making a mistake." She shook her head. "I'm correcting one." Then she turned and left. The next 48 hours felt like walking across glass. Every conversation carried static. Every corridor hummed with tension she hadn't created but had undeniably triggered. Her team at Norfolk noticed, avoided her eyes. Cole spoke only in clipped responses, but she didn't need approval, she needed evidence. By the third night, she'd assembled enough to file the report, documents, transcripts, data trails linking entries to aftermath. Proof that lives had been lost off record to preserve morale. She stared at the cursor blinking at the end of her statement. One sentence remained. "Integrity is not loyalty's enemy, it is its spine." She signed her name beneath it and hit send. For a moment nothing happened. Then the system confirmed, filed, submitted to oversight board. She leaned back, heart steady. The screen's glow reflected in her eyes, calm, not triumphant. She whispered, "Now let the truth walk on its own." The storm came the next morning. Not the kind from the sea, the kind made of politics, whispers, sudden meetings behind closed doors. Called twice. She didn't answer. Captain Lawrence called once. She did. Mitchell, they're saying you bypassed chain of command, he said. That report's going to the Defense Oversight Committee. You understand what that means? I do. They'll turn on you, still has influence. You could lose your post. I already lost something once by staying quiet. I'm not repeating it. He hesitated. You realize some of us agree with you, even if we can't say it out loud. You don't have to, she said. Just don't look away when it counts. When she ended the call, her hands trembled not from fear, from adrenaline. The kind you get when the cost finally arrives and you decide to pay anyway. By afternoon, the memo hit the circuit. Commander L. Mitchell under review for unauthorized disclosure of restricted data. She walked through the command building as people turned subtly away. Conversations died when she passed. The same pattern she'd seen before, fear disguised as obedience. At the end of the corridor, Cole waited. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "for what it's worth, I think you did the right thing." She nodded. "Then make sure the next person doesn't have to." He hesitated. "They might strip your clearance." "Clearance doesn't measure conscience." He almost smiled. "You really believe all that, don't you?" "Belief's the only thing I never." She walked on. That evening she drove to the pier. The water was rough, wind sharp enough to cut thought. She sat on the hood of her car, uniform jacket folded beside her. The horizon looked endless, dark, rolling, merciless. The same sea that had carried her through every storm. Her communicator buzzed once more. "Morales. Heard you rattled the big cages again. You okay?" She typed back. "Still breathing. Need backup. Just faith." There was a pause, then Morales replied. "You taught us that's the same thing." Smiled, the wind pulled at her hair. The smell of salt filled her lungs. 3 days later, the Oversight Board summoned her. Conference room, 7 officers, no warmth, sat at one end not as her superior now but as one of many witnesses, his face unreadable. The chairwoman spoke first. "Commander Mitchell, your actions violated procedural hierarchy. However," she lifted a folder, "your evidence has been, the data you exposed was factual." A murmur moved through the room. "Therefore," the chairwoman continued, "while your method is under review, your integrity is not in question." Exhaled quietly, the air felt lighter. The chairwoman added, "Commander will face internal inquiry regarding record keeping. Pending outcome, your post remains active." Nodded once, understood. His eyes met hers across the table. For the first time there was no command, no defense, just weary understanding. When the meeting adjourned, he caught her outside. "You won," he said softly. "This wasn't about winning," she replied. He looked away, then back. "You were right. We buried the truth because we couldn't bear to look at it. You made us." She nodded. "That's what command is supposed to do." He gave a small, sad smile. "You'd have made a better admiral than I ever did." She tilted her head. "Maybe, but I still believe the best commanders are medics. We just learn to treat systems instead of wounds." He chuckled quietly, a sound half regret, half relief. "You never change." "I hope not." He extended his hand. She shook it, not as enemies, not as absolution, just acknowledgement. Then he left. That night she returned to her office. The bay was calm, moonlight stretching across the water like a truce. She opened her window, letting the salt air in. Her communicator buzzed again, another message from Morales. "Range 4 just trained our first new instructors. We kept your words on the wall. Respect doesn't need an audience. Thought you'd like that." Smiled, tears rising uninvited. She typed back. "Proud of you all, keep the range human." Then she sat back, eyes drifting to the framed motto behind her desk, "Standard is honor." She whispered, "No, honor is honesty." The words hung in the room, quiet, permanent. Outside, the harbor lights blinked like constellations learning patience. The hum of distant engines faded into a softer rhythm, heartbeat, wave, breath. She looked down at her scar, traced it once. It no longer hurt, it simply was. Somewhere across the ocean, another convoy rolled through a different night, guided by people who would never know her name. And that was enough. Because leadership wasn't about being remembered. It was about leaving behind fewer wounds than you found. She turned off the light, the reflection in the glass merging with the dark outside, one quiet figure, steady, unbroken. And as she closed the door, the world seemed to whisper back the final lesson she'd spent a lifetime learning. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.